Hello, welcome back to the Jet Press Podcast. My name is Justin Fried, and I'm joined, as always, by my good friend, Mike Luciano. Mike, it's been a week since we have last talked. I feel like a lot has gone down in the world of not only the Jets, but in the world in general since we last spoke about this team. But how you doing today, buddy? It's Thursday. Normally we're here on Wednesday, but it is Thursday, so thank you, everyone, for joining us. Mike, what's up, buddy? How you doing?
Well, I mean, yeah, there were some events that happened on Tuesday or Wednesday.
The trade deadline.
The trade
That's
deadline, and then something a little later. I don't know. I'm not really
No,
paying attention
the
there.
future of football is more important than the future of the country. So I only know the trade deadline.
Although that may have some implications for the Jets if
That's
the
true.
guy who won ends up doing a redux of 8 years ago and prized Woody Johnson away. But I digress. Whatever you thought of the election, whoever you voted for, we are a nonpartisan football podcast. So
Sure.
you can get away from that and find some escapism here, then by all means, feel free to do it. We are on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Overcast, wherever you get your podcasts. We are on all those sites. And we're on YouTube. You can subscribe on YouTube. And you could join our membership, our Superfans membership, 99 cents a month. That's all it is. 99 cents. You will get priority reply comments. So you will always go on the screen and we will answer your questions. Just pay 99 cents a month. And you get a little loyalty badge next to your name. So you can help stand out amid all the other Jet fans out there. So 99 cents. Hit that join button right next to the subscribe button.
And sometimes we'll be drinking cayenne pepper water, apparently. At least
yes. And I apologize, Jet fan. I have to say I let you down. I went grocery shopping and I forgot to get cayenne pepper.
Oh, dude.
So, yeah, what I'm gonna do is when I get done working, I'm gonna go get some snacks because I forgot some stuff there too. One of my serial killer tendencies, I don't have a grocery list when I shop. I just try to memorize it and then eyeball it.
Oh, is that a serial killer tendency or is that just pride?
Well, there's also that. This is even crazier. If I do have a list sometimes, I won't go through the aisles. I'll go in list order. So if I need something on the list, I'll go to aisle 6, and then the next thing's in aisle 12, and I'll go there, and then aisle 3, and I'll go there.
That just seems impractical. Hey, John. John says, "Hey, fellas, been a minute." John is one of our members. We much appreciate it, buddy. Welcome back. It has been a while. It's been a week. It feels like it's been even longer. But yeah, let's get into it, bud. Let's talk some Jets.
Yeah, I feel like I was watching Zach Wilson's rookie years when that Texans game happened at this point, for how far away it is.
Been a long time.
Now, let's go talk some trades because the Jets made exactly one trade, and that was Mike Williams. Now, we thought they could trade guys like DJ Reed. He stayed. We thought they could trade guys if they really wanted to tear it all down, like Devontae Adams again. He stayed. Williams leaves to the Pittsburgh Steelers for a 5th-round draft pick. Now, it is the lower of the 2 5th-round picks that Pittsburgh had in this draft. And I'm really conflicted on Mike Williams. Do you want me to do the logical or brain poison Jets fan take first?
I feel like the brain poison needs to come first. Let's get the negative out of the way.
Because this guy,
I have a take that is not. I feel like I have a pretty solid take on this, but I want to hear your thoughts first.
All right, well, good riddance, because this guy came in $16 million, which is more. Everybody's saying, it's almost like a 1-year prove-it deal kind of thing because of the injuries, and we didn't really know what he was going to be coming back from the Chargers. That's all fine. That's a lot of money for a coin flip who you expected to be wide receiver too, because you did not expect Devontae Adams to come here. What?
I'm pretty sure it was $10 million. It was up to $15 million. I'm pretty sure it was
$15 million. That's still a lot of money.
Yeah.
For a player who was going to be wide receiver 2 this year because Malachi Corley wasn't going to be it. You didn't expect Devontae Adams to come here via trade. And honestly, I don't care what they say. I don't think anybody expected the year Allen Lazard is having.
Correct.
So you can't say, we expected that. He was supposed to be your number 2 wide receiver. 12 catches, no touchdowns. And I can't remember. Outside of Tennessee, I thought he was good in that game. I can't even remember any games where he had multiple big plays in the same game. He had maybe 1 catch a game where he'd be like, that's impressive, and then they never go back to him again.
Unfortunately, he had more.
You could argue, I don't want to say lost him 2 games, but they were driving to win the game twice in a 3-6 season to this point, and then he's unable to do his normal Mike Williams contested catch stuff against Stephon Gilmore. That's picked off, they lose. He allegedly ran the wrong route against Buffalo. Aaron Rodgers messes up that decision. Another interception. They lose against Buffalo. So these are not insignificant mistakes. These had impacts on wins and losses, these goofs that Mike Williams had. So that's the brain poison take. I'm like, good riddance. We weren't going to use him anyway. He's clearly not what he was with the Chargers. Even if he's better with Pittsburgh, we're not getting Chargers Mike Williams again. Totally fine. The logical take is saying, for a 5th-round pick, I'll take it because this guy I don't think was ever going to work here. Mike Williams is good at 2 things. Always has been. He's good at 2 things. Being a vertical threat down the sideline and being a red zone target. And the Jets never used him for either of those things. If anything, they used him more. It was slants over the middle, outs on the sideline, like stuff that you don't get a 6'4" guy with great speed to do, especially someone with his pedigree. He mentioned earlier, because he was doing an interview after he got traded to the Steelers, about how he was dreaming, he thought, when he went to the Steelers, as everybody is when they leave the Jets. It's always, oh, this is my dream spot. Not the Jets is my dream spot. He did say that because of the injury and because Aaron Rodgers is very particular in what he wants offensively and what he wants from his receivers, that he just never really got the time needed to build the chemistry. So he's trying to build it in the season, and as we all know, that didn't work. As AJ does say, though, at least he got a breakfast sandwich out of it, and we got a fun story. NYJ Matt, man, you cost the Jets a lot of money, and they made a big mistake. You basically spent 8 digits to get a 5th-round pick.
Hey,
2 games.
They cost him some money too. That was probably like $15 that breakfast sandwich.
$15, yeah, I guess up there maybe, but
yeah, it is in Jersey and New York. Yeah, absolutely.
And John does say though too, Justin, perfect fit to play with Russell Wilson. I do agree because him and George Pickens are perfect Russell Wilson moonball deep shot receivers. They're not Aaron Rodgers 3-step drop 5-yard out receivers.
Yes, I think there's a couple ways to look at the Mike Williams trade. As just in a vacuum, the trade itself, I thought it's a fantastic trade. Like the second I saw it was for a 5th-round pick, that is a lot more than I thought they'd be able to get for him, given the wide receiver market. We're going to exclude the Jonathan Mingo trade because that was just
what is going on there?
A Looney Tunes trade from the Dallas Cowboys.
John Mundock and AJ in chat, who says it's Matt's fault. You two combined have the same amount of touchdowns in the NFL as Jonathan Mingo as receiver.
Yes,
Mingo,
he has multiple career fumbles, no touchdowns of I believe 81 wide receivers to qualify over the last 2 years in ESPN's overall receiver rating. Jonathan Mingo is ranked 81st, which is dead last. So he's bad. Excluding that trade, which just didn't make any sense, it's hard not to look at the Mike Williams trade as excellent value for the Jets. The Steelers were a very desperate team to land a wide receiver. They've been trying for months and months and months to get a wide receiver. They were very, very, very close to landing Brandon Ayuk before he did ultimately sign that extension with San Francisco and then unfortunately got hurt. They were really desperate to land a wide receiver, and I think the Jets took advantage of that desperation here. On top of that, I think the Allen Lazard injury really gave them some leverage here because not to use that word again, because I feel like it's just become a slur.
Every time the Jets have leverage in a trade, it always ends up coming back to bite them in the ass here.
Yeah, but I do believe that gave them some leverage because the Jets, after beating the Texans, they're 3-6. It's an outside shot that they make the playoffs, but it's still reasonably alive to the point where the Jets are saying, hey, look, we don't have to trade Mike Williams. We can keep him as our wide receiver 3. Who knows when Allen Lazard is back? He's a lot better. Mike Williams, even if he's underwhelming, even if he's not the player he was with the Chargers, is a lot better than Xavier Gibson or whatever we've seen from Malachi Corley to this point. So the Jets had that leverage, and I think that helped them get that 5th-round pick on top of the Steelers' desperation. Now, the other part of it is the move as a whole, the transaction as a whole to sign Mike Williams is obviously an abject failure at this point. I mean, the Jets paid $10 million for Mike Williams. That deal could have gone higher. I don't think he hit any of those incentives, but they paid $10 million for a player who had 12 catches in 9 games and is a free agent now at the end of the offseason, at the end of the year. That's not a good signing. That's not a good signing. It did not work out as they have planned. But like you said, Mike, they weren't using him anyway. So even though it would be nice to have Mike Williams there, especially while Lazard is out, he started last game, and was he targeted once, I think, the entire game? I mean, twice maybe. He's not being used regardless. So they're going to lean on Garrett Wilson. They're going to lean on Devontae Adams. They're going to lean on their running backs and their tight ends in the receiving game. Ultimately, they didn't need Mike Williams. And as John said, he's a much better fit with the Steelers because the Jets were just not using Mike Williams the way that they probably should have been. They signed him to be that vertical threat, the guy who would be a field stretcher, who would be a red zone target, who could be a jump ball receiver. And the Jets are one of the worst vertical passing teams in the NFL, if not the worst. And a lot of that, you could point to the scheme, you could point to Aaron Rodgers, whatever the case. Mike Williams was a very poor fit here. So getting a 5th-round pick for him at this stage, especially like I think fans overlook the value of contracts and trades. For as bad as the Mingo trade was, the reason the Cowboys did that is because there's still 2.5 years of control. Now, what are 2.5 years of control worth when the player itself is not very good? I don't know. That's up for debate. But Mike Williams, you have him for the next 3 months. And again, 12 catches in 9 games. The fact that the Jets were able to get a 5th-round pick for that, that's a steal. And maybe one of the last great moves that Joe Douglas will make as Jets general manager.
AJ says, I live in DFW, Dallas-Fort Worth.
Yep.
I would feel better as a Jets fan than I would a Cowboys fan. Flying the green flag down there. Keep up the good fight, AJ, down in enemy territory. Brian Sternbeck, Mike Williams to catch Super Bowl winning touchdown pass confirmed. That would happen, wouldn't it?
If the Steelers make the Super Bowl, I mean, I'd be so hyped for Mike Tomlin.
And then he's going to go on a podcast afterwards and talk about how he hated being on the Jets and he was thrilled to go to the Steelers.
Dude, we could keep that trend going. That'd be back-to-back years. The Jets did that, traded a wide receiver.
Guess how many catches Mike Williams had since the month of October began? No cheating. Honors. Scout's honor.
I'm not even going to guess. I'm trying to remember. Is it? I don't. Well, okay. He had the 1 and the 2-point conversion, and I don't think it's going to count towards his stats.
No.
So, did he have 1 catch besides that, or 2?
4.
4. Oh, he had 4. Okay.
He had 2 against the Vikings, 1 against the Steelers, and 1 against the Texans.
I wasn't even thinking of the Vikings game. Yes, yes, that makes sense.
And he wasn't just like getting on a couple snaps. In those games, his snap counts 71, 51, 33. That's because it was a blowout. 58, 71. Like he was on the field all the time. That's what's crazier to me. It'd be one thing if he just was the wide receiver 3 or 4 and Lazard beat him out and he wasn't playing and he was getting 10 snaps a game and 1 catch. I'm like, all right, it just doesn't work. If he's on the field 70% of the time.
Yeah.
Like we know this coaching staff sucks. We know Nathaniel Hackett is the worst guy anywhere close to that level of offensive responsibility in the league. Todd Downing is below average to bad, but better than Hackett.
Right.
Like the fact that he's on the field for 2/3 of the game and they can't get this guy more than 1 or 2 catches a game.
Right.
Or at least if you're going to do low volume, use him vertically. That's the whole reason you got him. You didn't get Mike Williams to run 4-yard in-breaking routes. You got him for his size and his speed. That's what I really don't get about this. It's not the fact that they just didn't use him. It's that they didn't use him and then played him. What was he, that amazing a blocker on the outside? Because all we heard about Henry Davis blocking, or was he a bad blocker? That's why I don't get the personnel usage. Just makes no sense with this guy.
He was basically running cardio out there. I mean, that's why I'm saying when that trade happened, I'm like, well, Xavier Gibson can play 70% of snaps and catch 1 pass as well. Like he can do the same thing. In fact, Mike, you asked about his blocking. I'm glad that you asked. Now, again, I can't speak to if the tape matches this fully, but you know the lowest graded run blocker in the entire Jets is this season? It's not Jeremy
I would
Ruckert.
probably say Mike Williams based on that.
It's not Jeremy Ruckert. It's not Brendan Bates. It is a Mike Williams 36.4 PFF run block grade. And again, take that with a grain of salt, but that's by far the worst run blocker on the Jets this season. So again, I'm not trying to – I think Mike Williams is going to do well in Pittsburgh. I think this is a good pickup for them. It's a rich price tag to pay, but I think it's a good pickup for them. This is a no-brainer for the Jets. As soon as you get offered a 5th-round pick, I don't even care if you're trying to compete this year. You're making that trade 10 times out of 10. The signing was a failure. The trade, very good.
What do you make of them not trading DJ Reed?
I'm not surprised at all. If it was up to me, I'd probably do it. But at the same time, they're 3-6. Their general manager has no incentive to sell. And Woody Johnson is still trying to compete right now, especially because maybe he's stepping aside in a few months anyway. So who knows? I'm not surprised at all that the Jets were not selling pieces, whether it's DJ Reed or Tyler Conklin or whoever else would have been on that radar. I think DJ Reed is a phenomenal player who's having a great season in a contract year. I think he deserves a payday from some team. He'll be 28, I believe, in a few days later this month. But it's very unlikely that team that's going to pay him as the Jets. The Jets already paid Michael Carter. They're going to pay Sauce Gardner, despite what some portion of the fan base has tried to say about Sauce Gardner this year. They're going to make him the richest cornerback in the NFL and in NFL history, and he's going to deserve it. But Reed is a great player. He'll get paid from some team. It would have made sense to potentially move him and recruit an asset. But I also don't know what the deals were out there. I mean, if no team was willing to offer more than like a 6th round pick, which seems surprising given that Williams just went for a 5th, but at that point, sure, you might as well keep him. But I'm not surprised. I was not expecting him to trade him.
Any argument, any discussion about football that ends with the thought of maybe Sauce Gardner is bad, I don't really want to. I don't really want to entertain that.
Agreed.
Too much. Was there anybody like? Cause I'm looking at this team. Obviously, they have no incentive to sell, but I was looking like maybe this could be like an addition by subtraction thing where they just get rid of one guy, free up playing time. I guess Reed would have been the guy because Reed's not coming back.
Reed would be the guy because you also have guys that you could step into that role immediately, whether it's Jark Bernard Converse or Quantez Stiggers or even Brandon Eccles, who's in a contract year himself trying to play for a starting job next year. That's 3 guys right there that I would be perfectly fine trusting in a, not necessarily in a starting role for a contending team right now, but for a team that's 3-6, just trying to feel out what players you got on the roster, Reed would make sense. And if they were trying to buy, D tackle would have made the most sense. I mean, Quentin Jefferson, who was just released by the Browns, would have made a ton of sense, but he just signed with the Bills. I don't know.
Quentin Jefferson would have made sense, but also the problem is they can't stop the run. Quentin Jefferson,
right.
I don't think helps with stopping the run.
Agreed. And maybe there's another run-stuffing nose tackle out there they could have made a deal for. I mean, a Jadeveon Clowney would have been an awesome pickup to add to that edge rotation as a guy who is a proven run stopper, who is one of the best run-defending edges in the league and has been for a long time. But I don't get the sense that Carolina was super motivated to move him. I don't think they liked the offers that they were getting.
I don't think he was either because he's from there, so I think he wanted to,
Very true.
He's near the end of his career. I think he wants to finish at home kind of thing.
And also at 3-6, the Jets already paid for Devontae Adams. They already bought there. I don't think Woody Johnson, and I say Woody Johnson because I'm not sure Joe Douglas has much of a say here. I don't think Woody Johnson was particularly motivated to trade even more assets to go all in on this team when they're 3-6.
See, that's the thing. Not to bring back, and beat a dead horse, but man, I kind of the way I feel bad for Saleh, I think it's been proven lately. Saleh did not have as much power as most head coaches have in this league. I don't think Douglas has as much power as many GMs have in this league.
Not now.
He has the power to make trades, but his direction is based entirely on the whims of Woody Johnson, which I don't think a lot of teams are like that. A lot of the bad ones are like that. I don't know if every team out there is like that.
I think for a while, Woody was stepping aside and letting Douglas kind of run the show. He was taking very much a hands-off approach because that had been an issue with Woody Johnson in the past.
What do you know? The team was okay. Huh.
Right. Well, okay.
And then they just couldn't get Zach Wilson, but, other than that.
Yeah. Again, there's been certain decisions that we can point to and say that was a Woody Johnson decision. The decision to keep Zach Wilson as QB2 last year going into the year was a Woody Johnson decision, whether it's because he had a soft spot for Zach Wilson, which we all know he did, or it's because he didn't want to shell out more money for a backup quarterback when they were already paying Aaron Rodgers and then paying Zach Wilson decent money. Either way, that was a Woody Johnson decision. But for the most part, it's been the Joe Douglas show under Joe Douglas in the Joe Douglas era. That changed when Robert Saleh was fired. The second that Robert Saleh was fired, that changed everything like a switch, essentially. That was Woody Johnson overruling Joe Douglas and saying, I'm making this decision. I'm firing Robert Saleh. This is the decision I made. And since then, it's kind of been Woody running the show. I mean, the Devontae Adams trade was heavily influenced by Woody, obviously Aaron Rodgers as well. The Hassan Reddick situation was resolved by Woody Johnson in a lot of ways. I mean, it's been publicly made available at this point. It's Woody making a lot of the decisions right now. And I get that, considering that it's Joe Douglas is basically a lame duck general manager at this point. He does not have a contract in 2025, and barring a miracle playoff run is likely gone. So I don't even know what incentive he has to keep doing his job. But yeah, that's just the reality of the situation. I do think that Woody kind of stepped aside for a while, but at this point, this is Woody Johnson's team right now.
And moving on to a segment that Justin calls.
Let's go.
What do you call it?
Oh, you're queuing me up. This is the game.
I've made my opposition to this name very clear, but make a marriage work. There's concessions. So
yeah, what's wrong with the gangrene stat machine? The GGSM.
It's too alliterative.
The GGSM.
No, green and machine rhyming.
Yeah, that's the point. It's supposed to rhyme.
That's the point for me too.
It's catchy. I love it. It's great. We have this and the Woodies. Speaking of Woody Johnson, I did not want that to be an official thing. That was all Don't care.
That is not G-rated, man.
That will probably be coming back in a couple weeks. We'll probably be doing that at the bye week, the like mid-season awards, aka the Woodies. They'll be making their comeback. Maybe we'll have to change it if he is in politics again. Is it the Christophers? The Christophers? No, it's got to be the Woodies. The Woodies is so much better. Anyway, Gangrene stat machine time. Mike, first player we're going to take a look at here. Now, keep in mind, a couple of these stats are a little like the ones you'll see on screen are a little outdated. I'll amend them when I'm speaking because a lot of these were tweeted out a week ago when the Jets last played. But the first one we should take a look at, Mike, I want to talk about Quinnen Williams.
Let's talk about Quinnen Williams. That's a guy who has taken so much crap, in my opinion.
Way too much crap.
Way too much. Now, as the stat shows, Quinnen Williams has 8 pressures in Week 9, which was the most he's had in a game in his entire career. That includes 14 sacks all-pro year. That includes that. He's third among all defensive linemen on the interior in pressures, and he's tied for second with 6 sacks. Dexter Lawrence is obviously ahead of him, and I believe Chris Jones has more pressures than Quinnen Williams.
Yeah, so there's 3 guys that are now ahead of him in pressures. I don't know if you'd get it. It is Chris Jones and Dexter Lawrence. You know who the other guy is? Who actually
don't tell me. All right, AFC, NFC. Give me that.
AFC actually leads the league in pressures, has 7 more pressures than any other player. Now, he's played a lot more snaps for some reason. This guy's
interior lineman.
This guy's played 541 snaps. Chris Jones only played 397.
I'm going to say crazy. Christian Wilkins.
No, it is not. Wilkins got hurt, I think, so that's hurting him. But it is.
I just know because the Raiders don't sub out their linemen a lot.
It is same division, and it's a guy that is not a household name at all.
Devon Godchaux? I don't know.
No, this is Denver Broncos standout.
The same Allen. Division as the Raiders. Oh, okay.
Yeah. Same division as the Raiders. Sorry, Zach Allen leads the league.
Really? Because I remember they were playing him on the edge in Arizona. I guess they moved him inside full time.
Yeah, 44 pressures for Zach Allen. I mean, Vance Joseph's done such a good job with that defense, getting production out of guys like Zach Allen, who, I mean, he's having a great year.
I'm surprised they let him back in town after that head coaching stint.
If you look at the top 4 in pressures, it's just crazy seeing Zach Allen ahead of Chris Jones, Dexter Lawrence, and Quinnen Williams, who are right after them, as well as Kobe Turner, who we actually have an interview up with Kobe Turner on the Jet Press from pre-draft. Little plug there. But yeah, Quinnen Williams has been fantastic. I mean, he's been every bit of an all-pro defensive tackle over the last few weeks. It was a relatively slow start to the season for him, but especially now that they've gotten Hassan Reddick back into the fold, the D-line is I don't want to say woken up, but they just have more talent there. I mean, Michael Clemens had a good pass rush game this past week as well. And I just think having Will McDonald in there, who we might talk about in a moment, Quinnen Williams, Hassan Reddick, the pass rush has come alive for the Jets. And I just, wanted to give a shout out to Quinnen Williams because he's gotten way too much hate from Jets fans. In fact, to speak to how dominant the Jets pass rush was this past week, they had 32 total pressures as a team in Week 9. That's the first time since Week 9 of last year that the Jets had 32 pressures in a game, as well as 3 different players with 7 or more pressures, which was Quinnen Williams, Hassan Reddick, and Will McDonald. Of course, they also had the 8 sacks. Dominant performance by the pass rush, and that was led by Quinnen Williams.
There are 3 problems with fans evaluating defensive tackle play. Number 1, most of the time, there's stuff in the run, and it's hard to really see excellence just watching on the broadcast and run stuffing from a defensive tackle. So it's hard to gauge. Number 2, sack production is not. You could be a terrible defensive lineman and have 3 sacks, and you could be an elite defensive lineman and have 2 sacks.
Yep.
On the interior, at least. So because of that, you could say, well, stats don't tell the whole story. A guy could have no sacks for 8 weeks and be one of the best defensive tackles in the league. So It's hard to really illustrate that. And finally, there's always a guy at the top, like an Aaron Donald or Dexter Lawrence or like a Merlin Olsen, Alan Page way back in the day, where they're just completely dominating blowing people away with how good they are. So because of that, there's always an impossibly high standard that guys get held to. And Quinnen Williams should be held to a high standard because he's an all-pro.
Absolutely.
And because he took a downturn, I think, last year compared to the year before he got paid. It was right after he got paid, so it's he got paid, now he's declining. And he started the year off slow because he was getting early on, he was getting double-teamed every play because the Jets had nobody else except him. Will McDonald was not a known quantity like he is now. Jermaine Johnson was hurt. There was no Hassan Reddick. So all they had was him. So it was really easy to take him out of the game. Now, people are paying more respect to Will McDonald. I think he's 3rd in the league in pressure rate, by the way. Hassan Reddick is back. And Hassan Reddick, not necessarily a 10-sack, Hassan Reddick of old guy, but he definitely is making an impact. And Kinlaw, I think, has had a couple good games in a row. I think that's all helped Quinnen Williams, and now you're starting to see the All-Pro guy come back.
Absolutely.
And I'm thrilled for that because every year I feel like Quinnen goes like 4 or 5 games without a sack, and everybody calls him a bust, and then he wakes up again, and he's woken up again.
And on that note, I want to talk about Will McDonald really quick because Will McDonald, I think I feel like I got labeled as like a Will McDonald hater earlier in the year because I was like, look, some of these sacks are pretty phony. I mean, he had like 4 or 5 coverage sacks where it was just like, all right, he's not really the guy that made this play happen. I think he's playing some of the best football of his entire career these last few weeks, and he hasn't got a sack in each of his last 2 games. Yet this past week, as you see with this stat right here, he had 7 pressures this past week against the Texans. It's the most he's had in a single game in his NFL career. To amend this, he now ranks 11th among edge rushers in total pressures with 34, and is second amongst all edge behind Trey Hendrickson. I believe is the only guy with more sacks than Will McDonald this season. It's a breakout year in every possible way for Will McDonald. On top of that, he didn't do it against inferior competition. He was primarily lined up against Laramie Tunsil, who's one of the best left tackles in the NFL this past Thursday night. He had season high in pressures. He had 6 of his pressures came against Laramie Tunsil. He's now generated at least, this is according to NFL Next Gen Stats, he's generated at least a 20% pressure rate in 6 games this season. Oh, you're making a lot of noise right, everybody. What's going on?
I need to charge my laptop. So
I flipped away to look at a stat for a second. I'm just hearing some nonsense going on.
I accidentally had an empty can of Dr. Pepper and I knocked it over. So there was, yeah.
You're good. Before I was rudely interrupted, according to Next Gen Stats, McDonald's generated at least a 20% or better pressure rate in 6 games this season. That is the most such games in the NFL. So it's the sacks early on in the year, I think, were a little misleading. Right now, he's playing at I don't want to say an elite level, but as close to an elite level as you can get. I know earlier in the year I was like, if Will McDonald's your best pass rusher, your best edge rusher, that's not great. I think right now I've been proven wrong because I completely disagree with that statement right now. I think Will McDonald is the Jets' best edge rusher, and he's leading a pass rush group that has been very good the last few weeks. Due in part to Hassan Reddick coming back, due in part to Quinnen Williams playing at his best. They're all helping each other, which is what the Jets D-line did last year. And so Will McDonald deserves a lot of credit.
And I held my Will McDonald stock at a time when a lot of people sold, and I'm reaping the rewards here. Now, the thing with McDonald, this is just at least what I thought, observing the Jets. When they picked him 15, and people really didn't like it. By the way, people wanted Roger Jones. How's that look right now?
Yeah, it's bad.
Boy, the Patriot, man, they really screwed the Jets, didn't they? Ha, ha, ha. Roger Jones barely a starter. I don't think anybody looked at Will McDonald and immediately thought, like, this guy can't play. I think the problem was, why'd you pick a defensive end at anybody that high when you have these other issues right now? That move's looking, honestly, dare I say, brilliant right now, considering what this defensive line would have been without. Imagine if they didn't take him and they took Dalton Kincaid or whatever. What's this defensive line look like? Before Reddick got back and before Quinnen woke up? I mean, that is bleak.
Yeah.
And I know McDonald was getting some coverage sacks. I know Will Levis basically just ran into him and gave him a free one, and people judge based on sacks. But even at his lowest light, the speed was always there. The spin was always there. The aggression was always there. It was just, when are they going to play him? That was the problem. It's like, when's he going to get on the field? And honestly, even last year, he didn't play that much. You saw some stuff where you're like, I wish he could play more. But he's got Bryce Huff and Jermaine Johnson, all these guys in front of him. They're gone now. Boy, is he taking advantage.
My issue with it related a lot to Bryce Huff. That was the issue I took with the pick at the time, and I don't know if I could still say I have that same issue now. It's just so hard to say with Huff because obviously he's gone to Philly and he's been very underwhelming there. He's been a little
very
bit better.
Underwhelming is a huge understatement.
He's been a little bit better recently, but clearly not even close to the player he was with the Jets. Who's to say if he would still be that player with the Jets?
And they've even changed their defense to have him, because remember the whole thing was they used to have Philly standing up. Then they had him put both hands in the dirt like he did with the Jets and just wide 9 blitz, and he's still not getting home like he did with the Jets.
It's genuinely like puzzling. I cannot say at all. Like, I have no idea. I don't know what's happened to Bryce Huff, a guy who had the quickest first step probably in the NFL amongst edge rushers. Now looks like he's running in quicksand. I don't know what happened there, but yeah, I mean,
I think he
I
just
went
had one move, and people now they're taking the books out on him.
I went into the last couple of years kind of being like, look, if you know, the only way the Will McDonald pick is a success is if he replicates the production that Bryce Huff had. He's pretty much doing that. He's pretty much doing that. So at this point, yeah,
if Bryce Huff had 8
that,
sacks with that pressure rate at this point, you'd be a Bryce Huff tattoo on your back right now.
Correct. It's the right pick. It's the right pick in hindsight. I still think the process was a little bit flawed, but at the same time, the outcome is what matters here, and they made the right pick with Will McDonald. Gregory says, why are you not talking about our porous offensive line? Is that on the script today? Well, Gregory, you're in luck because we're about to talk about the offensive line in a second. In fact, probably not the way that you would hope, though. Because we're going to talk about Tyron Smith. And Tyron Smith was excellent against the Texans. And I know he's been much maligned. We've talked about him, and we even talked about potentially benching him earlier in the year. He was awesome against the Texans. I know Will Anderson got banged up. He didn't play the whole game, but still, he was very good. Smith had a 89.5 PFF pass block grade, didn't allow a single pressure. It's only the second time this year he's not allowed a pressure in a game. He was also the highest graded pass blocker, or is the highest grade pass block grade by any Jets offensive tackle this season. These were the games that he would routinely have with the Cowboys last year. And it's why it's been so frustrating that we haven't seen that Tyron Smith this year. I don't think we're going to get this every single week, but it was a very encouraging bounce back performance from Tyron Smith because, as Gregory is pointing out, first of all, I don't think the offensive line is nearly as bad as Gregory is trying to indicate here, but the very least,
I don't think it's amazing. I think it's fine, right?
Especially given that right now they are down their top 4 offensive guards. Maybe John Simpson plays this week. It sounds like there's optimism he will. It does not sound like Elijah Vera Tucker is going to play, and it does seem like the plan is going to be that Olu Fashanu starts at right guard. That's what Todd Downing suggested today. So you will, if Simpson plays, cool. You'll have Simpson at left guard, you know, the rest of the normal starters, but then Fashanu at right guard, and no Xavier Newman, no Jake Hansen, no Elijah Vera Tucker. I think they're going to be promoting Cole Lavallo from the practice squad this week.
Oh, not Cole, the Benigno voice, the immortal Cole Lavallo.
I do believe that might happen, and then they have Alec Lindstrom as well. So they're pretty banged up there. But just as far as against the Texans goes, that was a very encouraging performance. And then shout out to Morgan Moses. I don't have this tweet here, but Morgan Moses told reporters yesterday, kind of detailed exactly what he's been going through to play the season, because we know he had the knee injury earlier in the year, only missed 2 games, which he was expected to miss 2 to 4 games. He only missed 2. He's playing through right now, Mike. Did you see this? Did you see what he's playing through?
Oh yeah, it's frightening what he's having to do just to play.
He's playing through a grade 2 MCL sprain, a meniscus issue, and a knee fracture. Man's playing through a broken knee as well as an MCL sprain. He is, as Mike Garofalo.
Miko Hardman didn't want to play because he had a sore pinky.
Right.
And Morgan Moses has a broken knee.
Mike Garofalo, NFL Network, kind of detailed the process of what Moses had to do each week. He has been reportedly sleeping in a hyperbaric chamber and rehabbing around the clock in order to get himself ready for each week. This past week against the Texans, the expectation was he was not going to play. The Jets were not expecting him to be able to get ready on a short week. And by the time game day came around on Thursday, he had somehow gotten himself into shape. So shout out Morgan Moses. I mean, in a league full of warriors, I mean, if you are playing the NFL at this level, you are a tough guy. Like, I just feel like it's so dumb hearing people.
Well, the Jets are also probably injecting him with stuff they stole from the Bronx Zoo to keep the pain down.
There's a reason this guy played. I think it was 134 consecutive games between his rookie season to last year with the Ravens, when he finally missed a game due to a shoulder injury that we later found out was a torn labrum, I believe, and he had to have surgery in the offseason. And he still came back and played through that, by the way.
He is a tough SOB. You got to give him that.
Yeah, there's a reason that he's had that Iron Man label, and it's not just because he's been lucky. It's because he just plays through stuff that 99.9% of human beings alive would never dream of playing through. So shout out Morgan Moses, and also shout out Tyron Smith for his bounce back game. I don't know if you have anything.
I'm encouraged by that. Part of me is like, well, that's what you're supposed to do because that's what we paid them for, is to be an elite left tackle.
Yep.
I'm encouraged he came against Houston, who has a very good defense and a very good even though Will Anderson was hurt. That's a very good passer. Daniil Hunter, Will Anderson. I mean, that's not going up against cupcakes. That is the best of the best.
Not at all.
I don't know if we're going to get it every week because he was bad against New England, who does not have a good pass rush, but they have Keon White, and that's it. But I'm encouraged. I don't know how long it's going to last, but it seems like something finally clicked here.
Definitely. Now, Mike, let's talk about a player who also I think was getting some unnecessary hate earlier in the year and has, I think, proven a lot of people
to be fair,
wrong.
he literally had a ball a ball hit him in the sternum and it became an interception.
Criticism is fair. Of course, we're talking about Garrett Wilson. Criticism is fair, but there were some wild takes going around about a guy, people saying that he's like a mid-wide receiver too. Get the hell out of here. And again, some of these stats are a little bit off now, but Garrett Wilson at 91.1 PFF grade in week 9. You don't even need PFF to tell you. Watch the fucking tape. Watch what Garrett Wilson did.
Watch the catch
on Thursday. Watch his 2 one-handed catches, which since this data has been tracked, which is not very long, I think it's like 2017. He's the first player to have 2 one-handed catches one-handed touchdown catches in a single game. Again, that's only since 2017, so I'm sure it's happened before. He currently leads the NFL in catches and targets and is third behind only Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson in receiving yards. He has 10 more targets than any other player, 3 more catches than any other player. You know who's second in catches, Mike?
Second in catches in the NFL?
Yep. Not a wide. Well, that would give it away. I shouldn't have said that.
Well, now I'm going to say Brock Bowers.
Yeah, it's Brock Bowers. I shouldn't have said that. That's going to give it away. Our old friend Brock Bowers is second in the NFL in catches behind Garrett Wilson. But yes, Garrett Wilson is having an exceptional season. I mean, just by the numbers, not only should he be making his first Pro Bowl this year, because he still hasn't made a Pro Bowl, you could start talking about all-pro consideration. I don't think he'll make it, and I don't think he necessarily deserves it, but he has the numbers for it. He also has 5 touchdowns this year after 2 more this past week, which I think there's only 6 guys in the league that have more receiving touchdowns than Garrett Wilson. He also has the most first downs picked up through the air. Garrett Wilson has been every bit of a superstar wide receiver, at least production-wise, this season, and I feel like there were a lot of people trying to discredit him earlier in the year and say, I mean, people were saying stuff about him not even be like, again, I think he's
because they were expecting after the Zach Wilson stuff, they were expecting him to like double his production when you're going from Zach Wilson to Aaron Rodgers, and then he wasn't. He was kind of the same as before. So they're like, well, where's the improvement? In fact, this might be a regression.
I think expectations were a little too high too. I think everyone was like, just like last year. I mean, going into last year, remember the narrative was I think Garrett Wilson was a top 2 betting favorite for Offensive Player of the Year, which, I mean, great, but that's really high expectations to place on a player. So I feel like people went into this year with similar expectations for him, and it took a few weeks. He wasn't necessarily lighting it up earlier in the year, but if you look at the totality of his production right now through 9 weeks, he's having as good of a wide receiver season as any other receiver in the NFL.
If he continues at this pace, he'll finish the year with 113 catches, 1,252 yards, and 9 touchdowns.
That's great. The other thing also is, sorry, not to cut you off. The other thing also is, I feel like the wide receiver numbers are also just down across the board this season. At least just overall receiving numbers. I don't know if any receiver There's no receiver on pace for 1,400 yards. I don't think. I don't know if any. Maybe 1 or 2. Maybe Jefferson is on pace for 1,300. That might be it. And then Chase, no, I don't think Chase is. So I think Jefferson, because Jefferson played 1 less game. CeeDee Lamb might also be on pace for 1,300 because he's played one less game as well. But the receiving numbers are all down across the board. So that also needs to be taken into account for how productive Garrett Wilson has been.
Well, because running is up. So
yeah, of course.
If you include the 23 target game against the Vikings, which was ridiculous. In his last 5 games, if he maintained that pace for a full season, he would have 204 targets, which is crazy. That's 12 a game.
Oh my God.
He would have 100. That's basically what the Giants would give him elite neighbors.
Yeah.
He'd have 136 catches, 1,605 yards, and 14 touchdowns. If he keeps his pace from the last 5 games up.
That's offensive
now,
player.
I don't know how the production's going to look when it looked like Devontae Adams finally clicked in. And I'd imagine Adams is going to get maybe the lion's share of the targets. And I think that's probably a good idea because I think even at this stage, Devontae Adams is still better than Garrett Wilson is right now. But, man, what a luxury. Man, what a luxury. Yeah. We don't know what's going to happen with this team after this year because they're probably not going to make the playoffs. That probably means Aaron Rodgers is gone. That probably means Adams is gone. But when you talk about that magical draft class where Joe Douglas had the one good draft class he's had, of the 4 guys you're going to pay, I feel like we could debate Johnson and, honestly, Hall, because now with Braylon Allen back there. But The two you are not letting go anywhere are Sauce Gardner and Garrett Wilson. They're going to be Jets ideally for 10 years.
100%. And I hope that that's the case. And I feel like we could put to bed some narratives from earlier in the year. Real quick, before we jump into the Cardinals preview, one last player, Mike, we could talk about. Doesn't have to be a long segment, but I want to give him a shout out because I feel like there's not been a lot of discussion about the Jets safeties this year. And it was widely seen as the weakest position group on the defense going into the season. And it probably still is. But I feel like the Jets have gotten some pretty good production from players that they picked up off the scrap heap because Chuck Clark's hurt right now. Tony Adams has been banged up. A guy who's really stepped up, I think, has been Jalen Mills. Mills was the second highest graded player on the Jets defense in week 9 per PFF. He was credited with being targeted 4 times, did not allow a single catch, had that one really nice pass breakup over the middle. I forget who it was being thrown to, but it was, I believe the Jets were playing some variation of a cover 3 or a cover 6, and he kind of had to turn around and make a last second play on the ball, made a really nice play, led the team in tackles with 9 at a run stop, and of course that pass breakup. And I also think what needs to be talked about is his energy and leadership. During, this is a guy, the Jets picked him up. He was a free agent. They signed him when? In September? They signed him to their practice squad. He was leading the defensive back breakdown this past week. He broke down the DBs before the game. This is a guy that was on the practice squad 2 weeks or like a month and a half ago. Not even. I think he was on the practice squad last month. And now he's a starting safety for the Jets because they've had injuries. And I feel like he deserves a lot of credit, as does Isaiah Oliver, who has quietly been one of the best value signings, maybe the best value signing outside of John Simpson that Joe Douglas made this past offseason. So I feel like some credit needs to go to Jalen Mills and Isaiah Oliver, who have both been very good for the Jets the last few weeks.
The thing about Mills, too, who's the Green Goblin, which I think is an amazing nickname for a defensive back. Some guys are better safety, some guys are better corners. For a while, he was like, every year a cornerback becomes like the burnt toast meme. Remember Philip Gaines did that.
Yeah.
Myron Maxwell for a while. Before he got good, it was Ronald Darby, I remember, for a little bit.
Yeah.
And for a while, that was Jalen Mills.
Eli Apple.
Like the end of his time with the Eagle, he was bad. Really bad. And then the Patriots got him. I'll give Bill Belichick credit. He always knew defense. He looked okay there, but nobody expected this. I mean, he was begging for a job. The Giants cut him before the season. And then he comes in and is not only good, but I would argue it's some of the best safety play the Jets have had in years. I mean, Ashton Davis has never been this good, I don't think, as a pure safety.
No, he's better than
for years.
Yeah. He's absolutely better than Ashton Davis at this stage. I will not hear any argument that says otherwise.
So, yeah, I don't know what the plan is beyond this year, but, I mean, if he's willing to come back for another year, I don't think this safety class in the draft is very good. I don't see why not. He's doing a great job.
Yeah.
Now, the scheme might be different, but if some parts of it are kept, they're not going to keep Ulbrich, but if they run a similar scheme at all with whoever comes in to be the new coach, why not keep him?
Yeah, as Brian pointed out here, he was signed to the practice squad on September 23rd. He didn't get signed to the active roster until October 23rd.
I thought he was the bad luck curse at first because things were rolling for a while.
That's true. And then he didn't get signed to the active roster until a few weeks ago. Obviously, he was getting elevated, and he was starting while getting elevated from the practice squad. But yeah, he deserves a ton of credit, as does Isaiah Oliver. Obviously, they're both on one-year deals. Oliver his 73.3 PFF grade is 20th amongst 120 qualified safeties. And he's also been playing a lot of nickel corner. He's been very versatile for the Jets. I don't know how much longer Joe Douglas has, but if Douglas is around next year, one thing we know about Joe Douglas is he loves to not spend a lot of money at the safety position. And they're spending nothing at the position this year, Mike. I mean, I think Chuck Clark or Ashton Davis might have the highest cap hit of the safeties. And I don't think either of them have a cap hit above $2.5 million, whatever. I think Davis probably has the highest cap hit, which is crazy to say. I mean, Tony Adams is on a UDFA contract. Jalen Mills was signed to a minimum deal. And then Isaiah Oliver might have the highest cap hit. Actually, it's like $2 million. That's it. Like they're paying for all their safeties combined, like $5 million, which is crazy because they've gotten, I would argue, league average production at that position, which is
almost like
better
than they staff new defense.
Right. Shout out to Tony Allen. Shout out to Marquand Manuel. Shout out to Robert Saleh.
Tony Oden.
What did I say?
Tony Allen.
Oh, Tony, the former basketball player. Tony Oden. Lamar
They
Oden.
took inspiration from the former Grizzlies players, hard defense, and
I combined Tony Allen and Lamar Odom. but it's Tony Oden.
You were thinking of Antonio Allen.
Antonio Allen, yes, another former Jets safety who was a late round pick. But no, I think the Jets have gotten very good production from their safeties, and wanted to give a quick little shout out to Jalen Mills and Isaiah Oliver, who have been very good quietly the last few weeks.
And now it's preview time because the Jets are playing on Sunday again, and they are playing the Arizona Cardinals. The team, I think when we were looking at the schedule before the year, we're like, oh, they're going to crush the Cardinals. It is not like that anymore. These are not your grandpa's Cardinals. I like that they're succeeding just because for some reason, even though he got to the Super Bowl and was 3 points away from beating Patrick Mahomes, for some reason, Eagles fans think Jonathan Gannon was like the dumbest and worst coordinator ever. And then the defense got immediately worse after he left, and they fired the other guy.
He had a bad defensive performance in the worst possible stage, and that became the narrative.
Not even. I mean, Patrick Mahomes is wow. He struggled against Patrick Mahomes. Wow, that never happens.
I know. I'm just saying.
So I kind of like that he's succeeding in Arizona. Bad first year, but they weren't expected. Some people were saying they might win 1 or 2 games that first year, and he got them to 4, and they lost a couple more nail biters. Now they're 5-4. Kyler Murray is, I would argue, I think he's had better numbers with Cliff Kingsbury. I think purely in terms of how he's playing quarterback, this is the best I've seen Kyler Murray. I mean, he is balling right now.
Yep.
Marvin Harrison Jr., inconsistent, but when he's on, man, he looks every bit the star that they thought he would be when he's on. And, man, can they run the ball. This is a lot of these offensive guys came from Cleveland, so it's a lot of under center, running the ball, old school, and it's working because James Conner looks so young right now.
Yep.
Now, the defense is terrible, partially because when he came there, they just had nothing talent-wise. They had to basically detonate it and start from scratch. They're still in the process of doing that. But when I look at this Cardinals team, why I'm nervous is because they do 3 things really well that the Jets do horribly. Number 1, they get passing production from their tight ends. Trey McBride's one of the better tight ends in the league, I think. He's really breaking out this year. I think he's got the most catches and yards on the team. He's their number 1 option.
I believe so, yeah. Well, Harrison missed the game. Did he miss the game with a concussion? And
I think he did, yeah. And then one game he had like 1 catch, so.
Yeah.
So McBride's their top guy. That'll be tough because tight ends have killed the Jets quite often.
Harrison
Number 2, they run the ball.
Didn't miss a game. He actually didn't miss a game. He got concussed and then played the next week.
Number 2, they run the ball extremely well with James Conner primarily, but Trey Benson, who I liked a lot in the draft, is there. Amari DiMercato is there. They got guys here on this team. And I don't know, the Jets, it's just the same thing every week, but you know what? They can't stop the run. So until they can stop the run, they can't stop the run. Mm-hmm. And number 3, this should be obvious, quarterback run is a big part of their offense, and not even design runs. It's Kyler Murray doing his little scrambling, running around. You ever see like in cartoons when like Tom would be chasing Jerry and there's that like footstep noise? That's what I hear when Kyler Murray runs, just the way he holds the ball out too and his legs churning. But God damn it if it doesn't work. It works beautifully. And I don't know if the Jets are going to be able to combat that. So as much as I want to see them stay hot, and I think talent-wise, I think they're much better than the Cardinals. Their defense, Arizona, is not very good right now at all. Nope. The concern I have is everything the Cardinals do well are things that the Jets are terrible at defending against.
Yeah, a lot has been made about the Kyler Murray stuff, and I do think that that's the biggest X factor in this game is trying to contain Kyler Murray because the Jets have really, really struggled to contain quarterback scrambles. Even guys that don't run a lot. I mean,
look at Drake May just last couple weeks
ago. Stroud. Yeah, I mean, the last 2 games, Drake May and C.J. Stroud both have had success running the ball against the Jets, and neither of those guys are guys who scramble all the time. Kyler Murray very much can, and we've seen him take over on the ground in games this year. He's had multiple games with at least 7 carries. He's had a couple of games with 60-plus yards. One game where he had 83 rushing yards. Of course, had a 50-yard run in there, but he can make plays happen with his legs. And again, most of the time, it's not on design scrambles. Most of the time, it's, he's pressured, he scrambles out, and then he makes the defense pay because they're all back.
He's averaging 8.1 yards a carry this year.
Yeah, he's had a couple of really long runs that have had. Yeah, he's had some really long runs that have really inflated that. But yeah, when he takes off, he's usually getting stuff. And that has been by far the biggest issue with this Jets defense is for as talented as they might be. And this has been an issue under Robert Saleh for a very long time. This was before Saleh was fired. This has been a thing. This is part of the scheme is that they're very aggressive. They are overly aggressive, especially their defensive linemen. They're taught to get upfield as quick as possible. They are not really taught contain as much. They don't prioritize contain nearly as much as they prioritize just getting upfield and just pinning your ears back and getting after the quarterback. That really doesn't work against a quarterback like Kyler Murray, who will make your defense pay. They need to have a spy out there almost every play, or any play that you think Kyler Murray, will be throwing the ball. Because if you don't, he's going to make you pay. And even if you do have that spy, that guy needs to make the tackle, whether it's Quincy Williams, whether it's Jamie Sherwood, whether it's one of the safeties, whoever it is. They need to have somebody on the quarterback. I don't want to see Michael Clemens dropping back as the QB spy, because Michael Clemens is not going to tackle Kyler Murray in open space. In fact, I don't really want to see Michael Clemens a lot in this game, because I worry about how he can tackle Kyler Murray at all.
I don't even think Sherwood can tackle Kyler Murray in open space very well.
Two guys who need to be the X factors are Hassan Reddick and Will McDonald, because they are both athletic enough to be able to run down Kyler Murray, to be able to keep him in front of you. That's what they need to do. If Will McDonald is getting pressures on the quarterback, if Hassan Reddick is getting pressures on the quarterback, they cannot let Kyler Murray routinely escape, because he will make this defense pay, especially if they're back in coverage and it's third. We can see it now, Mike. Every Jets fan can see this. Third and 12, 15-yard run. 3rd and 12, you got the defense backed, or you got the offense backed up. There's a holding penalty in there, whatever it is. You've had a really good first couple of downs. Kyler Murray, 3rd and 12. Everybody goes deep, just runs it. Because that's going to happen multiple times in this game if the Jets do not adjust the way that they approach this game. I will say, like you mentioned, Mike, the Cardinals defense is not particularly scary. They don't concern me there. They've kind of been a little up and down with that, but more down than up. They did just
they try. It's just they don't have the horses right now.
They did just do a really good job against the Bears. They blew out Chicago 29-9, but they also allowed 27 to a Miami offense that has been very stagnant, even with Tua back. They allowed 34 to the Packers a few weeks ago, 42 to Washington earlier in the year. This defense is very susceptible, and I don't think their offensive line.
That's what you get when your defensive coordinator is 30 years old. So,
who is their DC?
Nick Rawlis.
Oh, Nick Rawlis. I knew that. He's a former. Oh, you know what? No, Nick Rawlis. If there's anybody watching that's a WWE fan, that is the brother of former WWE wrestler Riddick Moss. Weird little tidbit. Anyway,
I totally knew that.
You totally knew that, right? I look at that. There's
big
my
Riddick Moss. You can't see right back off the camera. There's a big Riddick Moss poster right there.
Hey, normally you bring the random facts. I'm bringing the random facts.
Yeah, you got it. Especially if it's wrestling, you got to take that one.
I got the wrestling random facts. But I also, with the Cardinals, I don't think this offensive line is particularly threatening either. I like Paris Johnson there. They're starting right.
I disagree. They rank pretty high in terms of fewest sacks, I know a lot of that's Kyler escaping, and
that's what I was.
The ball out of his hands quick, but it's certainly a good unit.
I think a lot of that is Kyler Murray. I think the scheme has also really helped them. They've been able to run the ball effectively. James Conner has had a very good year. It's weird because I look at the talent they have on it, and it doesn't. Who their starting right guard is right now, Mike?
Isn't it Jalta Froholt or
no? He's at center. Tristan Colon, former Jet, briefly a Jet, is starting at right guard. Former Jet Kelvin Beachum, who is a good player, is starting at right tackle. Froholt starts at center. Evan Brown is their left guard, and Paris Johnson. That's not exactly murderer's row of an offensive line. I do think a lot of that, the not allowing sacks is a lot of that's on Kyler Murray being Kyler Murray, and just he's a very difficult quarterback to sack. You see with the Ravens as well with Lamar Jackson. It can inflate offensive line numbers, but I do think that's an area that, I think Hassan Reddick or Will McDonald might have a favorable matchup against the Kelvin Beachum. I definitely think Quinnen Williams has a favorable matchup against this interior offensive line, whether it's Evan Brown or Tristan Colon. I think that's something the Jets can take advantage of. The issue is if you get the pressure on Kyler, not letting him escape and just being able to collapse the pocket and make sure he goes down. It's the thing that teams have really struggled with this year against them. And it's a thing the Jets have struggled with against every team. It's be really difficult against the Cardinals.
And this is not just like Kyler Murray's not a running quarterback. This is a once in a generation athlete with a gun for a right. He's 5'10", maybe 200 pounds. And he could throw the ball 60 yards. It's amazing watching him play. And the Jets just can't go into this game thinking it's just going to be dink and dunk and run the ball. It might be if they can't stop the run, but they could go down. They go downfield all the time. And Kyler's got a fantastic deep arm and deep accuracy. And I know we're not talking about the offense a lot. It's not just going to be a cakewalk. Like as John Mundock says, just score every drive and we'll be good. Easier
Ideally.
said than done.
Yeah.
I get what they're building there, and Philly's scheme is very similar to it's a lot of cover 3, a lot of hanging back, a lot of zone. I trust Aaron Rodgers generally to find the holes in that zone. I trust Devontae Adams to find the holes in that zone. But they are off giving up 9 points, and this is a young defense. So sometimes it just clicks for young guys. Mm-hmm. So I'm worried that maybe they figured something out there and they don't give up 42 points like they did against Washington or Green Bay. I guess the best way to counteract that is to get Breece Hall going early. Mm-hmm. Now, we've seen, though, the defensive line, Darius Robinson, I think, is coming back soon. Who was
Missouri, right? Darius Robinson.
And Darius Robinson was picked because he is a great run defender and a good pass rusher.
Yep.
Is he going to play this week?
He was activated. I don't know if that means he's going to play.
I don't think he's going to play this week. But anyway, with or without him, if I had to pick a unit that's the strongest on this defense, it's the defensive line. So that could be a challenge.
Yeah, it's this
is the toughest game to predict because they're on the road in Arizona. 1-54. I don't care how much you like the Cardinals. The Jets have a better roster than the Cardinals.
Yeah.
I think they're pretty even in terms of quarterback play. I think Kyler's a little better now. I think skill position-wise, I don't think it's close. The Jets blow them out. I think defensive personnel-wise is certainly not even close. The Jets blow them out. But I'm still, if we're doing predictions, I'm going to have to go Cardinals 24, Cardinals 27, Jets 24. Because what I'm afraid of is James Conner gets going and the Jets don't have an answer. Because I think he's very underrated and they just keep going over and over and over and over again. And the Jets don't stop him. Or, quick little play action, Trey McBride over the middle. Bootleg Kyler Murray runs. Goes down to Marvin Harrison down the sideline, match up against like Eccles or somebody like that. Mm-hmm. Everything the Jets struggle with.
Yeah.
That's what the Cardinals do. So it's a real stylistic clash here. Because also, a lot of things the Cardinals do poorly, the Jets can exploit pretty well. So this is really going to come down to coaching. And Jonathan Gannon, as much as I don't think he's an amazing coach, I still right now would probably take him over Ulbrich. And I know we had them getting crushed by the Texans and they upset us this week, but just looking on paper, Cardinals could be a tough matchup. Like Marcelo Cabrera says Jets 30-17. That could very well happen too. Defense is bad. Maybe Kyler doesn't have his best game. Maybe they figure out a way to slow down James Conner. That could happen. I'm just worried if the Cardinals start fast, I don't necessarily trust this Jets team to put a stop to it and then mount the comeback.
And I'm glad you said that because I was about to bring that up. I think Kyler Murray is someone who is perfectly engineered to attack the weaknesses of this Jets defense. And we've seen the Jets start slow a lot this season. And I think really just over the last few years. And I think if that happens, it could snowball pretty quickly because I've seen nothing from this team that tells me that they have the mental reserve to be able to bounce back and maybe save their season, which, again, we've said that a lot, but their season is definitely on the line. If they lose this game, they pretty much have to win out. I mean, they can afford to lose one more game. I guess since it's NFC, it's not as bad as if they lost to the Colts. I think if they lose, the Colts game is absolutely a must win. This one,
the unk off between Aaron Rodgers and Flacco, combined age of 80.
Pretty much. But yeah, as Brian said here in chat, the Rams missed 21 tackles against the Cardinals when they played in week 2. Kyler Murray forced 8 of them. This Jets defense has had issues with tackling. They've been a little bit better.
Rams scheme, not too dissimilar from the Jets.
Right. Similar coaching tree. The Jets defense has had issues with tackling. They've been a little bit better this year, kind of because Jordan Whitehead's gone, so that's helped. But they've been taking a little shot there.
I thought Jordan Whitehead was amazing because he had 3 picks in 1 quarter, though.
Nah, he blocked me on Twitter. I got to take a shot there.
He looks bad with Tampa, too. So.
Yes. But yeah, I do see that being an issue for this team. As far as predictions go, I'm going to predict an Arizona win. I'll say I do think this. I think this will be a game that we're going to look back and be like, dang, this is one of the worst defensive performances of the year. I'm just fully expecting it to be like big defensive letdown. They weren't prepared. They didn't, they looked sloppy. They looked undisciplined because if they even start to hint in that direction, I think this is an Arizona offense that can fully take advantage of that. So I'll say 31 Arizona, 17 Jets. I think I think it's a 2-score win for the Cardinals. I always love to look at potential revenge games as well. And despite on top of it being a revenge game for Tristan Colon and Calvin Beachum, it's also a revenge game for Greg Dortch. And isn't it funny, Mike, that the Jets had 2 little 5'8" returners / slot receivers on their team, essentially, and it was over the last 2 years. Greg Dortch, who is a training camp darling, and then
really quick though, before that, we want to shout out Ryan Moss, who just got a membership gift from AJ. So we got
what a guy!
Thank you, AJ and Ryan Moss.
What a guy! Thank you so much, AJ, and congrats to Ryan for receiving that membership gift. We should have had the cayenne pepper thing going, but it's okay.
Yeah, I got to go to the grocery store.
Blame Mike for that. But isn't it funny, Mike, that they had Greg Dortch in camp, and he's become not only a very good returner, but a viable slot receiver, as well as Khalif Raymond, who, if you remember, Khalif Raymond was on the Jets, I believe, for 2 games, and I'm pretty sure he muffed 3 punts in 2 games, and then was cut. And now not only is he a very good returner, he's like an actually decent slot receiver, which is kind of weird. Brian said, I think Tristan Colon was part of a rant you had midseason last year. Is that true? Maybe. I don't know.
Probably, yeah. We got to go check the tape, but
you know what it might be about? It might be about Keith Carter, because I'm pretty sure Tristan Colon liked a few of my tweets, shitting on Keith Carter, being like, this guy sucks.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I went on a rant about why is Keith Carter still employed, which here we are, November 7th, 2024, and Keith Carter is still employed, and the Jets have still had offensive line miscommunication issues this year, even when they were healthy. So maybe I was on. Maybe Tristan Colon was onto something, because I don't believe Colon ever played a game. I'm pretty sure the Jets signed him, and then I think he was claimed off waivers, I believe, by Arizona after they cut him as part of final roster cuts. But he was briefly coached by Keith Carter and apparently did not like him. But anyway, yeah, I'll say 30-31-17. That's actually very close to Marcelo Cabrera's prediction.
The inverse.
I've been flipped. So neither of us are confident in a win this week. But if they win, Mike, and they're 4-6 going to that Colts game, we'll be perfectly set up for heartbreak.
Especially with the Colts looking pretty not good at all. Vikings on the road, yeah, but that was not a good game for them.
Yep, and Joe Flacco does not concern me against this defense nearly as much as Kyler Murray, even if we've seen Flacco actually do well against this defense, I'm pretty sure.
Browns last year.
Yeah, the Browns last year. But, yeah, it does not concern me nearly as much as I don't think Joe Flacco is running all over this Jets defense.
If he does, that'd be great if he just had 90 yards rushing.
That'd be 90 yards. He never had that in his career. There's no way he's ever had that in his career.
In a game? Or, you mean total?
I mean in a game.
All the years combined?
No, I think he's probably had more than that in his career. What is the most yards
he's ever 889
had?
rushing yards.
Yeah, that makes sense. What do you think the most
yards?
In
188 starts.
What do you think the most rushing yards he's had in the game is?
I don't know, probably 5.
No, I'm gonna say I'm gonna say 40 something. 57.
I just wish it was like college where they count sacks as negative rushing yards.
Oh yeah.
He would have 100 carries for negative 20 yards.
Yeah, Kent State's quarterback had negative 60 rushing yards yesterday against Ohio. Don't ask why I know that. But Joe Flacco, 57 rushing yards in a game is the most he's ever had in a game. Brian says, Hassan Reddick, revenge game with 3 sacks, and we start getting worried about his incentives. This is a Hassan Reddick revenge game. That would be crazy if he backdoors his way into the incentives with sacks. But he's not going to play enough snaps. He needs to play. It's the sacks and playing time. He's not going to, I think it was 67%, 67.5% of snaps. I mean, unless he's playing 100 for the Jets aren't. Woody Johnson won't let that happen. He's just not going to let him play that much. But this is a revenge game for Hassan Reddick. Any other former Cardinals on the Jets that we're not thinking of right now?
Not off the top of my head. I think you got them all.
I think so. If I think of one before we sign off, I'll let it know. But yeah, that's about it.
Regardless, thank you for tuning into the Jet Press podcast. You know where to find us on the podcast platforms and on YouTube. Subscribing helps support the show, and joining our 99-cent membership helps the show. And you get a couple nice little perks to go along with it. So that's how you can support us, and you can show your support. So thank you guys for tuning in. Jets are 3-6, Justin. Any last words before you take us home?
It would be a revenge game for Lecky Fotu if he wasn't hurt. So
yes,
that's my final thoughts. But yeah, I'm hopeful for a win. At this point, We just have to hold on hope that this works, that this regime works, that this current crop that they got works. But I'm not optimistic at all. Like I said, I think I said this last week, I will be back, fully back, if the Jets win their next 2 games. If they go in there by 5-6, you got me. I'm back in. I'm sold. I'm ready to be heartbroken again. But until they prove that I should be back, I won't be back. But we'll be back on Sunday talking about this game. And until then, thank you all for joining us on the show. You can follow me on Mike on Twitter at by Mike Luciano. Follow me on Twitter at Justin T. Fried. Follow Jet Press at the Jet Press. Download the Jet Press podcast wherever you get podcasts. Check us out on YouTube. Subscribe, like, hit that notification bell. And of course, as Mike just mentioned, you can become a member for 99 cents a month. It is greatly appreciated. We're now up to, I believe, 5 members. So much appreciated to anybody who wants to support our show in any way. We stream live every Wednesday, normally at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. We will be back next Wednesday, not Thursday. Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern Time and live immediately following every single Jets game. Thank you all for listening to Jet Press Podcast. I've been Justin Fried. That has been Mike Luciano. See you guys next time.
Be good to each other out there, kids.